All right. Well, it looks like we're live, and this is Light the City. We are doing our first online free webinar. We're calling it Shine Online, and this is coming out of some people asking questions about where do I start building an online presence, small church or a small and a small nonprofit, and we are so busy doing the work. Our hands are in absolutely everything. How do I actually have time to go on Facebook, or let alone build a website or start with a website? And so we know that because we're so busy, because we wear so many hats in our organizations, that this is a difficult and challenging subject in terms of our time and in terms of some of the learning curves for some of these things. But at Light the City, we do want to create great resources for you, and this online workshop is just one of the times where we get to do that. We hope to do these things throughout the year with different topics based on conversations we've had with you and with those who are part of this network. And so online presence is a great way to start. We've just launched a website for Light the City, and we've learned a ton about this process, and we have a lot more to learn. And so we hope that you enjoy this, and whether you're watching it live now and joining us in the Hangout, or you watch this after the event on our blog, you can watch this video and consume the content then. But I have a great privilege to talk today with Cliff Rode, and he is part of Goat Cloud Media. He worked with us as a church to help audit our website and really point out some things that we may do better or things we are missing, and really help guide us as a church on our website on how to do a little bit better. And Cliff, through Goat Cloud Media, does a ton of these trainings, a ton of these workshops around the Capital District. He's just been a tremendous friend and a great resource. So I want to introduce Cliff and let him kind of talk about himself, and then let us know what we're going to talk about a little bit more specific today.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Dylan. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just great, thank you.
Terrific. Well, that should mean that everybody else can too. Well, I'm not going to bore you terribly with the about me. Yeah, I am Cliff Rode. It's true, I call myself the Chief Executive Goat of Goat Cloud Communications, and what that means is I get to own this operation to help people really thrive online. My target is helping small businesses and not-for-profits to really have an exceptional online presence, because online presence is just such an important part, really, of having any kind of even physical presence in the world. I want to say thank you so much for having me, Dylan. It really is my privilege to be here today and to be chatting with you and with the folks who are tuned in. You know, I just went to a meeting earlier this morning that was related to, boy, everything that's going on in the creative community in the Capital Region these days. There's really an effort to push that, and I'm certainly happy to be a part of that. But it just struck me that that conversation was even bigger in a sense, and that there's just so much going on to really enhance what is going on in the Capital Region, in Schenectady, and I know that Light the City is becoming a very important part of that. And kudos to you, by the way, for having that great article in the Daily Gazette yesterday.
Well, thank you. We are very blessed to work with a great reporter who contacted us, and she did a great job doing a write-up on Light the City.
Well, good. No, you were asking kind of the things that I would be talking about today, and so my hope today is in spending this hour or so with you and with anybody who might be asking questions, is that I want to arm people with enough information so that if they have either a nonprofit or a small business or whatever that kind of entity is or that project is that they're working on that they need an online presence for, either they have enough information to get started on their own, or if they're looking to hire someone else to help them, they know the questions that they need to ask that person who would be helping them out.
Great. So why don't you begin and maybe even just start really basic. What is online presence? What do we mean when you say that?
Yeah, that is a fair question. So when we're talking about online presence, I think what a lot of people think about first is a website presence, and but online goes really well beyond just a website. There are so many different places now that there is information about you as a business or you as a nonprofit online that all of them together we consider an online presence. So there's the website, social media accounts that you might have on a Facebook or Google or Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, etc. There are online business directories where you just have a listing, for instance, superpages.com, yellowpages.com, Yelp, Foursquare, etc. There are all these places where you might, say, third-party um, instances online or third sites where you might be commenting. Well, that's certainly part of your online presence too, if you are taking an active role on somebody else's website. So all of that taken together is what I would consider to be your online presence.
And something I would interject too when you start here is that we believe, and I hope other nonprofits and churches and small businesses even believe that they have a very important message or a very important product. I hope that's why they exist. Profits are trying to change things, and churches are trying to change things, and businesses are trying to provide solutions. And so when we called this event Shine Online, the idea was that since we believe, we have a conviction that we have such an important message, we ought to do online presence well, and we ought to learn how to do it better. And so that really is the heart of why we've kind of curated this topic and wanting to talk about this topic. So why don't you go ahead and share some things with us now?
Yeah, sure. And if I just might comment on what you were saying right then. One thing to think about is that, well, actually, I'm going to talk about two different things. One is that sometimes what I tell people too is that your online presence is just a part of your presence, let's say, in the world. Right? Or say if you have a marketing or branding campaign, you do some things out there in the physical world, and you do things on the online world too. So however much a part the online component is, and it can be from 10% to 100% of what it is you do to try to get the word out about what it is you're trying to accomplish. But it is kind of often, not always, but often the first place that people find out about you. And so I kind of think that it is really critical, yes, that you are shining online. And in fact, just as a minor segue, I would say that or kind of illustration of this, a couple of days ago, a fairly noted grocer in this area changed their name. They decided to change their name, and they're changing their entire brand. And first of all, I mean, obviously, I'm talking about Price Chopper here. I can't say enough nice things about Price Chopper and the family that runs that corporation, because they do so much good in our community. Unfortunately, they really kind of, when it came to their online approach towards explaining and implementing what they're doing, which is a massive branding change. I mean, this is a company that is almost in the Forbes 100 list of the top businesses in the United States. They really, the whole like social media online part of it almost seemed like an afterthought. And one thing that I'm always encouraging people is that you cannot think of this as an afterthought. Most companies in our area are not Fortune 100 companies, but even the little guys, the like the cities, the goat clouds of the world, really need to be thinking about their online presence too, because of that first point that we were talking about, which is you gotta shine online, because it's going to be the first place that often that people come to find you.
Even our small church, it's amazing how many people first view the church through the front door of the website. And I imagined in our age with smartphones, digital access, you just Google everything If I'm looking for a business or a nonprofit, or if I'm looking for services, or looking for a church, that is so true. They access our information first through that front door called the website.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think with that in mind, why don't we start talking about websites? Dylan, what I'm going to try to do here is do a screen share. And so I'm going to take my beautiful mug off the window there for a second. I'm sure that you're going to get a massive amount of complaints right now about that. But let me know if you can see the screen that I'm going to share. Okay. Let's see if this works here. And what I'm going to try to do is do a. Can you see my screen?
I can, yes.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So this is a. I'm being distracted because I'm actually getting a phone call in my ears as I'm trying to speak right here. Hopefully it'll stop ringing in a second. So I'm going to talk about 5 things here, although if anyone does a count here, really, I hope you get more than just 5 tips, even the 6th secret tip. And the first one that I wanted to talk about was having a website. Because when we were talking about having an online presence before, probably the most important asset there is your website. That is the door that gets opened, that people come through to take a look at you. And it's also the place where you have the most flexibility to describe who and what you are and what you do, and be the most creative with it. It's just what I kind of liken it sometimes to is the mothership. You always want to be bringing people back to the mothership. And so, I put on there, duh, right? Everyone's got to have a website. But you'd be amazed that I think the statistics still say that it's something like fewer than 50% of small businesses out there have a website today. So if you don't have one, you're in good company. But you're competing against people who do have a website, and those people certainly have a leg up.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And so when we're talking about having a website, well, what does that mean? There are websites that are as simple as just a one-pager, basically, that might have a very basic list of services and contact information. And then you also have websites like an Amazon.com or the New York Times. It's almost hard to imagine that both of those things can be considered websites. But so I don't want people to stress to think that they have to have like the most enormous website to begin, because you don't. One of the beautiful things about webs can grow organically over time, and they will. And I guess maybe that's a curse as well. Sometimes I've heard it said, I wish these were my words, but they're not, that a website is a flash of inspiration and a lifetime of work, and they can be. But they're a pretty important part. They are, I would say, the most important part of your online presence. Number one is, over time, you do want to have great, abundant content. And by the way, I should say, why do we want to have a good website? Well, I think it's because if we have a website, we want people to find us. And so part of what I'm talking about here is helping search engines to find your website, so that people can find you because they've used a search engine. But also bear in mind that the way that search engines work these days, and really by search engines I'm talking about the Google monster, which has just an enormous share of search in the United States. But websites want to serve up good information to their customers, and they view that as by you kind of showing good information to your customers. So if you have a website that is designed well and with your visitor in mind, then over time the search engines are going to give you their love, and your website will show up in results. So don't think that your website is going to show up in search overnight, unless for some reason you have an incredibly niche product that people are looking for and nobody else is doing, or service. But otherwise, it takes time, and so you build up that great, abundant content, and over time, the content should be unique. It should be in your voice, rich, compelling, strongly recommended to include not just words on a page, but video, audio, etc. The more content you have, the better. Because also, remember that if you have more content on there, you are going to have more words, and those words describe what you are about, and so the search engines can understand that better. A website should be appealing to the eye and easy to navigate. Right in this day and age, people get pretty frustrated if a website takes a long time to load. They will move on to somewhere else, and so it's pretty critical to make sure that they can get around and find what they want. It should be in logical locations. The website needs to have a good hierarchical navigational structure with cues throughout the website of where to get additional information that the person might be looking for.
Cliff, I think just a question.
Sure.
Just a question on your slides first. Have you clicked through any of the slides yet?
It just says have a website.
We're still seeing just the first slide.
Oh, really? Okay.
And we're also not seeing presentation view. We're just seeing the slide kind of set before you would play the presentation, just so you know.
Oh, okay. Okay, so clearly that's not working. Okay. All right, how about now? Does it show anything there now?
No difference that I see.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. I'm sorry about that. So this is what you're seeing right now, right? Are you
Correct.
seeing?
There you go, yep.
Okay, so it's moving around a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I don't know if I can make that panel disappear, but I'm just on this this slide called "Have a Website, Duh." So I apologize for that.
No, it's good. We can see it now. That's fine.
Okay.
So my question quickly on websites, as you were covering, and you may cover this as well, but you mentioned have a lot of content because number one, it's informational, but also because it helps people when they're searching to kind of more narrow the focus and find what they're looking for and hopefully find your site.
Yeah.
And then you're also talking about design and aesthetic, and we maybe sometimes confuse on our websites with the amount of content and how that actually looks and is portrayed on the website in terms of the design and the aesthetic. And often is the case, we over clutter our websites with every single piece of information and content, and we then lose the design aesthetic. Is that what I hear you saying?
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to be careful, I think, when it comes to design, and my approach to design is, and I always encourage people to think about this, is try to get yourself inside the head of your visitor. Forget about what you think a website ought to look like, but pay attention to what your visitor wants. And I think that most often what people want in a website, in most websites, and I know that there can be specialty websites where this is a little bit different, but I think most often what they want is a web page that is easy to read and understand. They understand what that content is going to be about because it is displayed in a sensible way, and it is not filled with all sorts of bells and whistles that are distracting. I think people want to get to content, and then they want to move on. Now, there is kind of a fundamental tension there, I think, because you don't necessarily want a person just to hit like one page of your website and then leave. So you want them to stick around on your website and find out more information that you have to offer, or maybe you want them to sign up for a newsletter or whatever the case may be. So you're kind of wrestling, in a sense, with that visitor, because on the one hand, you want to make it as easy for them as possible to find the information they're looking for and get done whatever it is they need to get done. But you also want to draw them in and make them a part of your community. But you don't want to distract them, with bells and whistles.
Great.
So, I touched on the notion that you definitely want your website to be fast. And a closely related issue is that your website be friendly on smaller screens, smartphones and tablets. This is called either mobile ready or responsive design. Responsive just means that the website responds to a screen of a different size. I was recently giving a presentation where someone asked, well, do you have to have a whole different website for mobile viewers? And I think the answer is no in most instances. You just need a site that will still look good and be legible and navigable on a smaller device. And so, speed definitely comes into play there because a lot of times a site that may render reasonably quickly on a desktop could be slowed down on a phone because you don't have the internet connection that you have at home or at work. So and there are tricks to that to make images smaller, put code in the right places and stuff. That kind of goes beyond having an online presence 101, but these are things that you need to think about. So, and those good bones. So this is kind of all of this stuff that I'm suggesting you need and want for your website, which is that mothership for you of your online presence. The tip I have is to consider using WordPress, which is what's called a content management system. It's a piece of software that allows you to structure your website in ways that both visitors and search engines will like. So that's tip number 1. Although, as I say, there had better been a couple more tips that you found out of that.
Yes, yeah, WordPress has been, we use our church website, uses WordPress, and it's just fascinating when you get into it. Understand it a little bit. I only know very little, but and then it's also fun because there's a ton of themes and a ton of designs that really the potential is unlimited for your nonprofit, business, church website. There is so many themes that really help guide you and give you a template to build your site on.
Oh, it's absolutely true, and I suppose I could touch on that. I mean, there are a number of things about about WordPress that I really like. That ease of use is certainly one of them. I kind of tell people if you can handle word processing, you can probably handle posting content on your website using WordPress. It's free and open source. It's scalable. I think the New York Times, eBay, I think those are both WordPress websites. So, but you can also have a really small website with WordPress too. Yeah, and there's a community of people out there developing for WordPress. It's really kind of becoming a web development platform in and of itself, not just a piece of software you can use to create a website. Like for instance, I'm sure some of your the people who are getting involved in like the city, they may have members of their own organizations. Some places will use WordPress and their website basically as the entire infrastructure for their organization to run the organization, keep track of member lists, send newsletters to people, etc. So it's a great little package.
Yeah.
Why don't we move on to the next one? Let's see if it works. There we go. Did that show up having a good nap? That's probably about what everyone would like to do after lunch, and when they're listening to me drone on about having an online presence, is have a good nap. But I'm not actually talking about having a lowercase nap. We're talking here about the uppercase NAP. And NAP in the online world stands for name, address, and phone number. And what we're meaning here is by maintaining a consistent name, address, and phone number across your entire online presence. And this is really critical for local businesses. Why is that? Is that way because it's how search engines understand that you are who you say you are and that you are where you say you are. If there are even slight variations in your, maybe you're an LLC, and sometimes you have periods in between the L's and the C, or maybe a comma before LLC. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Or maybe you're an incorporated nonprofit. Sometimes you use incorporated, sometimes you use Inc., sometimes you don't use it at all. This is all confusing to search engines. Same goes, as stupid as this is going to sound, if you use parentheses with your phone number sometimes, and sometimes you use hyphens, that can be confusing to. Remember, these are just software databases, and you would hope that they could figure out that those are differences that describe essentially basically the same information, but they can get confused. So make sure, if you want to get found locally, that you are using a consistent name, address, and phone number across the board. Local, this stuff is all kind of related for sure. Being local too, once you've got established what your name, address, and phone number is, and really if you wanted to, I would say you should extend that into, using a common tagline maybe you have for your entity, contact information, an email contact information, a particular website you want to drive people to. All that stuff should be consistent. But you want to go ahead and get that information on online business directories. And there are two main kinds of online business directories, or two big categories that I would call horizontal and vertical. The horizontal ones take all comers. So, it doesn't matter what business in, what kind of nonprofit you are, etc. You post your information there. And we're going to come back to this, but two of these, believe it or not, are Google Plus and Facebook, right? Probably some people would be scratching their head right now and say, wait, Facebook is a business directory? And it is, and we'll talk about that. But also, Manta.com, MerchantCircle.com, YellowPages.com, SuperPages.com, HotFrog.com, etc., and etc. There are a lot of online business directories out there that people search. Not, someone might go to YellowPages.com instead of going to Google.com. Probably in an older demographic, in particular, those who, some probably still look at their phone books, although I bet there are quite a few who don't. But some will go to Yellow Pages instead of Google. But Google still understands that if you're posting your information at yellowpages.com, that's a further indicator that you are for real. And because you've used that consistent name, address, and phone number, they're going to know that it's you and not somebody else. But so those are the horizontal ones. The vertical ones are those business directories that are related specifically to your industry. So if you're a nonprofit, for instance, I would get a posting on idealist.org. There are others that are out there. There may be local directories, local chamber. I would consider that to be horizontal, but there might be local directories of nonprofits or the type of business you're in. And you should make sure to get your listing there. Now, the funny thing is, often, I'll tell people this who really don't have a huge grasp of being online, and they're surprised to know that there actually is a business listing describing their organization at all of these places, even though they didn't put it up there. So it's true, because there are what are called these data aggregators that get this information together, and they ship out information, or others. Directories will buy that information from a data aggregator and post it online. And so what most of these online directories will allow you to do is have a certain amount of information for free. Usually they'll try to upsell you to get a special deal, be an advertiser, etc., something along those lines. But in any event, it's absolutely incumbent to claim that listing. Make sure that the information is correct and follows those rules of having your good NAP, and that the name, address, and phone is consistent. And now I was mentioning before Google Plus and Facebook. Let's talk about Facebook first. Facebook, you can have a business page, or a cause page, or what have you. And so you should definitely put up a wall in between your personal Facebook presence and your professional Facebook presence. But if you are a representative, leading representative or director of any kind of business or nonprofit out there, you have to have a Facebook business page, because a lot of people spend a lot of time on Facebook, and there are plenty of people who spend all their online time on Facebook. And so you want to be able to reach those people by having a presence there. And I think also that it's just the case that people expect businesses and nonprofits to have a presence on Facebook. And so if you don't, it kind of casts a little bit doubt on how for real you are. And when I talk to people about this, they groan a little bit and about the social part of these directories, but you got to be there. And so in Google Plus, of course, is I think they call it now Google Plus My Business. You want to make sure that you have your presence there because just in general, you need to make use of all those Google assets that are out there. But Google Plus, Google My Business in particular, you must do because it's hardwired into search, and Google Maps, which is very hardwired into local search. So you got to have that Google presence there.
In terms of where to start, will you be covering social media? And the question for us beginning, do you suggest Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Google Plus? It seems like there's so many options.
Yep.
And when we're talking about limited time and laser focus for some of these things, and I'm getting my website started, and I got the mothership, the first step there, and then I supplement that and I start to reach my audience. But how do through these social media channels, do you have suggestions on where to start?
I do actually, and you're predicting my show in fact, Dylan. So I definitely.
Great. Look, we could also table that for the next few minutes.
Well, why don't we just table it for a minute? Because there was one thing that I did want to leave folks with a little tip on going local. The one is making sure that, especially on Google Plus and Facebook, that you have a presence and that information there is consistent about your. My tips on the slide you can see talk about Moz Local and Abraham Lincoln. Kind of unusual to put them together, but Moz Local is moz.com/local, and that is a shorthand way of getting your information out there in a consistent way to all the data aggregators, or to the most important data aggregators. And then those directories, as we were saying, depend on the information at those aggregators. That costs maybe $85 a year, something like that, to make sure that that information is consistent. But what Moz Local does is it checks first to make sure that your Google Plus and Facebook information is consistent, and then it pushes information out that you've given it to the aggregators. So it's a really cheap and easy way or that your information is good and consistent all throughout the internet. I talk about Abraham Lincoln because this is where sometimes it's hard to talk about this stuff, Dylan, because yes, it's being local, but yes, it's being social, and we're getting to that issue that you raised. But so the Abraham Lincoln references, actually I think it's a better reference to, there's this monk, I think in the 14th, who Abraham Lincoln had paraphrased, whose name might have been something like John Lydgate or something like that. But he's the guy who said, supposedly, you can please all the people some of the time and some of the people all the time, but you can't please all the people all the time. And I think Abraham Lincoln mentioned it in terms of fooling people some or all the time, right? So, or supposedly he did. So, but anyway, the point here is that on a lot of these online business directories, people have the opportunity to leave reviews about your business. And so, as a business owner, small business owner, or profit, you should, to my mind, be encouraging people in most instances to go out there and leave reviews about you. Those people who you did please, well, please ask them to tell the world that you pleased them, because those types of reviews help visitors understand that you're for real, you're a good place, and also the search engines like it. Now, you're not going to please all the people all the time. There are wackos out there, for lack of a better word, who leave crazy reviews about you. Maybe because you poured them a cold cup of coffee one time. It just wasn't your best day. you need to respond to them too, not in an angry way, but just to acknowledge that there is a review out there and saying, even if it's just saying you're sorry or it was a bad day or what have you, offering to have them come in and get a free cup of coffee or whatever the case may be, to the extent that you can get reviews, get positive reviews, respond to negative reviews, people will see that you are a real entity out there. And I think no one expects that everybody can please everybody all the time. And so that's my tip on that one. Now I wanted, let's see if we can go down here. I'm going to spend just a minute on this and then move on to that social media question, which a lot of people wrestle with. I hinted at before making use of all the Google assets, and so you want to make sure that you do. And we talked about it before. Google is the monster when it comes to search, so you have to get Googled. You need to have a business page. You have to make sure you have a great presence on Google Maps. Because this is how people find you. Right? If you don't want people to find you, okay, don't bother with any of this stuff. But if you're bothering to have an online presence, chances are you want people to come find it. And so if you want people to find it, make sure that you, I guess maybe this is sort of a quasi-religious reference of lying with the beast, right? I like to joke about this, but Google is a beast out there when it comes to search, and you have to get down with Google and do it the Google way because search so tremendously. Now, the positive side, I suppose, is that a lot of these services from Google are free. And I mentioned a couple there too called Alerts and Trends. Trends is, in essence, you can see what people in the Schenectady area are searching for these days. And maybe you can plan some of your marketing or some website content as a result. Then Alerts is a great way to, if you have a Google account, you can set up your own personal searches based on terms that you care about. Maybe it's your business name, maybe it's what your business does, maybe it's what your nonprofit works on, and get an update on a daily basis, on a weekly basis about what other people are saying on the web about these issues. And that's a great way to stay topical as well. So tip there is absolutely maximize your use of the Google assets that are out there.
Just a note on that. Can you speak, or do you know a little bit more about the Google for Nonprofits even, and
oh yeah,
the free things that they provide?
Yeah, Google, that's a great point. I'm glad you asked that, Dylan. Google for Nonprofits is a fantastic service that's out there. It's actually a variety of services. One of the things that they offer, which is really terrific, is if you are a 501c3, I think with that status verified by the IRS, then you can make use of a couple of things that are really important for an organization. One is the Google Apps suite of services. And so that is email, that is calendaring, that is document sharing. Google Apps is a fabulous service. I offer email as part of my services, but I always tell people, look, use Google if you can because it's so much better. I can't begin to replicate what they can provide you. And if you're a nonprofit, let me say, normally they charge you $50 per person per year to use those services. But if you're, a verified nonprofit, you can use those services for free. Google, I think, I know they're a massive company. I think they're revenue dollars in the last quarter, something like that. But they do have their heart in the right place in many respects, and they really do have a push to help nonprofits. And this is a great way to make use of that. Now, they also you can also get free advertising through the Google AdWords service, which is the place where Google makes all of its money, or most of its money. Being able to advertise for free, and that's actually, just to give you a hint, that's one of my secret bonus tips is talking about advertising. We can get to that at the end if we have time. But it's a shortcut way to get traffic to your website. And advertising usually costs money. And if you can get it for free, well, that's not a bad thing, getting people to come to your website.
That is very true.
Free is good, in my book. I mean, you got to be careful. It's true. You need to be careful about do you get what you pay for? But I will say that in the case of Google Apps or Google AdWords for nonprofits, you are getting a phenomenal service for free. And Google has not even paid me to say all that, just so you know.
That's good.
And I got to tell you, and there's this, right? I have this jokey slide about lying with this, but I have mixed feelings about Google because they do collect an awful lot of information about us. There is a trade-off there. They're gathering data about all of us, or all of us who use those services, and sometimes you can turn that data collection off, sometimes you cannot. So you got to go into it with open eyes. Their services for nonprofits are pretty solid, to say the least.
And people listening in now, and people that will watch this video later, as we're talking through these things, they can be kind of like the hard work of setting this foundation. But I just want to reinforce what you've already been saying, that these are the critical steps. I mean, this is building the foundation. Before we get to Facebook and what you're going to talk about next, before we get to even content and marketing and how to reach things, we've geared this for 101, and sometimes the 101 can feel a little bit like, okay, okay, I get this or whatever, but unless we truly start with a good foundation, I don't think we can properly take the next steps. And so as you're talking about social media there, okay, do we have a foundation from which to build from, and then we can move on to some of these other vehicles and avenues for online presence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point, Dylan, and I mean that's certainly what we're trying to do here today is really give that foundation of the basic things that be thinking about as they explore this world of having an online presence. I mean, hopefully, even if you have one, maybe you're learning a couple of nuggets, about things that you hadn't thought about yet. But and I will say, Dylan, on my end, your audio blanked out for a second. Did you ask a question that I did not ask, or was it more of a comment?
It was just a comment about the foundation and
okay.
Building on that.
Okay, terrific. Well, so let's turn to social and this is where I get the most groans whenever I make this presentation. Social, and I always say, the question is, do I have to have a social presence on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Google Plus and all that stuff? And I say, yes. Sorry, you do. You really do. But it's a do. Yes, you do, with caveats, I suppose, because on the one hand, well, we talked about Google Plus and we talked about Facebook, and you gotta have a presence there. Can it be just sort of a basic about us presence? I think it can be, yes. But if you really want to maximize social media, then you need to have more than that. You have to engage in the dialogue that is going on social media. Does that mean you have to share cats playing piano videos? I don't think it means you have to share those. And in fact, on a business perspective, or from a business perspective, or professional perspective, yeah, I would say you do not want to do that, unless you are selling pianos for cats, because it is social, but it's really, you don't get chummy with your customers or your clientele or your target audience usually. You may have a good relationship with them and speak with them in a professional manner. So, and it is conversational, but it's not the colloquial conversation you're going to have with your buddy from high school, let's say. So that's one caveat, and we had mentioned that before. You really need to understand that there's a difference between your personal presence on these social media outlets and your professional presence. There really needs to be a distinction between the two.
Just on that, Cliff,
yeah.
And let me know if I'm jumping the gun again, but speak a little bit more about and how it relates to these social medias, if you're not already going to.
I'm sorry, speak a little bit more about what?
Well, I was asking, speak a little bit more about knowing your audience and how
Oh,
that relates to some of these social media platforms.
yeah, it's a critical consideration, Dylan. You really do have to know your audience. And this, I think we were talking about that at the very beginning of this conversation, and it's something that I'm always telling people about getting inside the head of your target audience, your visitor to your website, with whoever it is who's going to participate with you on social media. And so, for instance, I'm saying you have to have a Facebook presence and you have to have a Google Plus presence. But let's say you're a not-for-profit that's dealing with troubled youth. You know what? They're not on Facebook, and they're probably not on Google Plus either. So while you do still have to have a Google Plus and a Facebook presence because your funders are going to be on Google Plus and Facebook, if you want to reach the troubled youth, you got to go find them wherever they are, right? And so you need to identify which social media outlets teenagers are using.
Yeah,
They tend
they're probably on Instagram.
Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, right? You're absolutely right. And so you need to plan accordingly. And another critical part of the thought process, right? This is all it has to be a part of strategic thinking about how you're trying to reach people generally. But you also need to bear in mind that the modes of communication are different across these social platforms. There might be some where, like Twitter, for instance, right, you're limited to 140 characters, and even Twitter recommends that you only use about 120 characters, because if you want somebody to, let's say you've put up a link on Twitter and you've written about it, if you've used 140 characters, then you kind of missed the link if someone is going to retweet your tweet, right? So what the communication that works on Twitter isn't necessarily going to work on Facebook, isn't going to necessarily work on Instagram or Vine or whatever the case may be. So that's another thing to be thinking about. And then also what you want to be thinking about is your presence, especially if you are trying to engage an audience, has to be a real, authentic presence, and a regular presence. Because if your Instagram account looks like a total ghost town and you haven't updated any photos since 2013, then why is someone ever going to bother coming back to look at your account or engage with you? Because they think you're gone. So yes, you have to take part, but don't take part if you're not really going to take part, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. You must have went to Light the City's Twitter page because we don't use that so much right now. We're primarily using Facebook, as that, but it's so true. If I went to the Twitter page for Light the City, it's a ghost town, and that's not serving us to build our network and our audience. So that's a great point.
Well, it's not, and again, but it doesn't mean that, remember that flash of inspiration, a lifetime of work, that can't be built up organically over time again. But we were saying before, Dylan, how that someone is opening the door to you by your online presence, and it may not be your website first. Maybe it's your Twitter account. So, and I will say there are some folks who might say, oh, I'm never going to participate in Twitter. My audience is not on Twitter, but you might still nevertheless establish the account there to kind of protect your name and brand, so that nobody else can take it. That was one of the things that I found in investigating the Price Chopper situation. There were some accounts already existed with that name Market 32, but there were some accounts that had not even been claimed yet, and it was pretty surprising that they hadn't been claimed yet. So, yes, you got to be there, but yes, you need to really be there if you're going to be there. And yeah, participate in the way that people participate there. Social is really kind of a thing. Um, you know, For better or for worse, it's where a lot of conversation happens these days. I think instead of happening in a face-to-face way. I think that so as a consequence, I mean, there are people, and I am one of them also, who sometimes absolutely lambasts the fact that people are online all the time, myself included, looking at my phone or computer instead of looking across the table at the person I'm with or across the room and engaging with them. But I think that these social media outlets still fulfill a very human need to converse with others, even if it's only with strangers. People have that desire, I think, to share. I suppose you see all the time. There's like popularity contests going on, right? And everybody wants to go viral with whatever it is they posted online. Um, and but it does serve a purpose, and you do need to be conversational. So I think that's probably more understandable from a profits perspective than from a small business perspective, right? Because a small business is often really consumed with the idea of selling whatever it is that they're selling, and here they are faced with social media, and instead of selling, everybody's telling them, no, 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 you got to be conversational, engage with your audience, don't try to sell them stuff, provide them valuable information, valuable content, don't be pitching all the time. And it's true that if you want to succeed in these social media outlets, that's the way you got to do it. You cannot sell because people will turn you right off.
I think also what's true is building your, connecting with your audience. So if you're a small nonprofit and you are raising and you are looking for donations and stuff, while you're not trying to only use social media to have people donate, you can use social media to, number one, connect with that audience, grow those donors, and even manage your what nonprofits call donor relations, and also tell the stories. It's the great benefit of these platforms, is that you can really share the stories of what your nonprofit is doing, which in turn creates more traffic to the site and to your cause, as you're sharing what you're doing good in the world. You hope that people kind of buy into that, both with their heart and with their hands and with their wallets. And so I think that that's just such an important piece as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. People do love stories, and especially too for the nonprofits, although not exclusively nonprofits, having those stories on your website too, not just testimonials, but how, what is mattering for you, why, and allowing people that opportunity to tell the world how something was meaningful to them really resonates with people. Done right, it absolutely does. It's a very good point, Dylan. One other thing that I was going to say about being social online is that there are other ways besides social media outlets to be social. One is to go out and participate, add comments to other people's blogs or newspaper articles that are related to things that you're working on. You just want to make sure that you're careful to be offering, again, good, unique content that's in your own voice. You don't want to just say "me too" with a link back to your website. You do absolutely want to have a link back to your website, but you need to add to the conversation in a substantive way so that people see that you actually do provide value. And actually, I should say too, with respect to participating in these social media accounts, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google Plus, they also have what are called groups and communities, depending on which social media asset it is. And as a business or as a person, you should be participating in these groups and communities. For instance, on Facebook, I'm involved in like an advanced WordPress community. And so, I will chime in there sometimes with information about something I learned that I think other people will benefit from, or sometimes I have a question about, an issue that I'm wrestling with, and there's a whole community there to support me. And so, likewise, there's all sorts of groups and online groups and communities out there for you know, um, uh, every topic under the sun, basically. So my tip down at the bottom on this one slide is make it almost automatic. There are services out there that you can use to pump out your information. Say you put together a new blog post for your website, you can send it out automatically to a bunch of these social media outlets at the same time. And so,
Yeah, exactly. It's a little beyond the scope of our time here, but I think that's such a great thing for people to look into is things like Hootsuite and all these
yep.
apps that exist for people to really Buffer is another one, and that help people with multiple social media online platforms to post on their schedule ahead of time and so on. Even Facebook now has that option.
Oh, to post later, yeah. And I would say the only thing to be aware of or to be careful of is kind of to remind folks of what we talked about just a few minutes ago, which is, in these different social media services, there can be different lingo, different ways to talk, different ways to approach the same topic. So even there's it seems very desirable to be completely automatic and just send the same thing out everywhere at the same time, but that might not be the most strategic way to do that.
Well, we have a few minutes left, and let me just do a quick recap of the big points you shared, and then let you kind of close with anything that you have. I know you have some more content, and then I'll kind of close our time together. But so far, you've been telling us that, number one, a website is a must, and put the time, energy, effort to do that well, to build that foundation. The second thing we heard is that local business must be in local online business directories. So do your work, do your due diligence to put those in those local directories. And you mentioned things like online business directories, the kind of the vertical and the horizontal both, and how that's important. So you have specific areas that are for maybe just built for nonprofits. And then make sure you are in things like Yellow Pages and all the other ones. The next thing you mentioned is maximize the use of Google. Get Googled, as you said, and that is so important because it is the beast, and we need to lie with that beast in a way that helps maximize our own efforts. And then get social. And so we just kind of finished that segment here about getting social, the importance of that, the different platforms, at the very least be on Google Plus, but then look to see how you can build your audience through other avenues where they may be spending more of their time, such as the ones we mentioned, Twitter and so on.
Yeah, that's a very good summary. The couple of points I would mention. I mentioned the social tip, but I think Dylan, I shared with you an outline of this talk that you should feel free to share with anybody who would like to get it from you. But the last kind of main point, the fifth tip is that I had was to make sure to monitor what you're doing online. And this is where I kind of call it be a dork. But if we watch TV these days, we know that being a dork is cool. It's no longer something that's not. So, but the important thing is to watch statistics. I use all the time, again, Google Analytics, Google Webmaster Tools. Understand what is working for you and what is not. Those things that are working, guess what? Repeat them elsewhere. Those things that aren't working, well, you got to fix it. That's all. And by monitoring data on website traffic, where your traffic is coming from, etc., you really have an opportunity to enhance your online presence further.
So as we close our time, practically, we're going to put some notes and link people to these, some more information, as well as outline of this talk, and then some practical areas where they can go get some more things. There's a great book for churches called The Social Church by an author, Justin Wise. Churches can grab that. But Cliff, where can people find you? How can they connect with you? And how could you help them with some more information on this?
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you, Dylan, so much for asking. And And more, thank you so much for hosting this today and allowing me to share some time with you. It's really been a lot of fun. But you can find me at goatcloud.com. You can just email me if you want to at cliff@goatcloud.com. And I am local, based here in the Schenectady area, and so I'd be happy to answer any follow-up questions that anybody had.
We want to thank you for your time and helping us launch these online workshops well. We appreciate your insight and just helping us build this online presence foundation. I would encourage people to just start. I would encourage people to work with Cliff or at least hire someone to help them put the resources forth to help them build an online presence if you're stuck especially. We will provide some more notes and some more resources based on this stuff as we go. So we want to thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully you ate your lunch and during this lunch and learn time. And I want to encourage you to look forward to more of these topics as we go. We also encourage you to connect with Light the City's Facebook, so where you can in community and connection. You can also send us questions about future topics that you may want to have covered with your church or your small business or your nonprofit. We'd love to curate great resources based on your questions and your content. We want to serve you well through Light the City, so we encourage you to do that. Send us an email or connect. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and we will connect with you next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Cliff.
Thank you. Bye-bye.